Folks, I'm going to call this game courage over accuracy. This was an interesting game in that my opponent had 90% accuracy to my 66% accuracy score and lost to me. So let's see how it happened. Sometimes courage trumps accuracy. So the opening was fairly benign with my usual stuff until about this move where my opponent challenges the center right away. This move I made here was kind of a blunder in that two pieces are now attacking the pawn on e5, and really the only compensation for exchanging that off, besides losing a pawn, would be perhaps to win the d5 pawn after the next move. But it's kind of iffy if that's even a good way to go. So we go through the exchange. I kick out the bishop, and then I take the pawn. My opponent checks me here. And interestingly, my opponent challenges this pawn here. Computer says he should have castled. I kind of agree. So at that point, I go for the knight exchange. And then I kick out the queen. And then I take the pawn. And even though I'm up a pawn, I think I have an advantage in development, and my king's a lot safer than my opponent's king. Here I'm just sort of planning moves, and my opponent leaves a pawn out, so I figure I'll take it, but at least I have two protectors on the b2 pawn from my prior move. My opponent goes for the not so unobvious move, attacking the pawn in front of my king, h2. We simply move that out of the way. I was tempted to go to h4, but had my opponent exchanged those off, I'd be in the same boat as my opponent, exposed king. Opponent's trying to get rid of the defenders, which the bishop is. So we go for a quick steal of a pawn. So then my opponent goes for the not so obvious checkmate threat. So we just come back with the idea that at the minimum we'll get to exchange off the bishop. And that's what we do. So my opponent takes back. And although my opponent's pieces are a lot more active, my opponent's king is out in the open, and so long as this pawn up here is protecting from too many threats to the g2 pawn, I'm safe. So I go for this idea to kick out the bishop. It does work. And then to develop my queen. And my opponent wants to avoid the exchange because, all things being equal, if I can exchange out, I'm on top. But by avoiding the exchange, there's a check. Now, although there's a freebie rook, what happens is if I take, and although it is with check, I probably could have done it, my opponent somehow might get this check in here. That wouldn't go well for me. So we take, moves back, check again, moves back, check again, because I'm trying to basically move black's king to an area that I can exploit the fact that it's not protected. Takes back. So here I put two pieces on this pawn over here, And the idea behind this move is I can come back and check on C2. So that's what we do. Moves over. Another check. And I'm just waiting for my opponent to make enough of a mistake that I can capitalize. So here I'm winning a full rook, although my extra rook is out of the action at the moment. This move, though, triggers a queen exchange, which is going to lead to a very advantageous endgame, being up a rook. So I finally join up these pawns on the queen side, and now if I can just mobilize my pieces, I should prevail, but black is showing resilience by chasing down the pawns, but I get there first. And then, at this point, it's just a matter of technique. There's no real way for black's king to infiltrate. So my opponent doesn't give up, and since there's such a time scramble, we just start promoting. So a little technique. There's just way too many pieces. And then finally, we have checkmate. And that's what they call a real battle.